Chuck, what do you enjoy most about being a paleontologist?
Oh, probably field work, getting out and on the beach in the desert and by myself and just enjoying nature and making new discoveries and getting paid to do that. It's amazing.
It is amazing. And when did you know that you wanted to become a paleontologist, and what was your career training?
So back in 1959, my dad broke his ankle. And as part of his recovery, we'd come down to the beach. And after a while, we started collecting shells and learning where they lived and their names and that sort of thing. And so I got to know the fauna off California pretty well. And then just before I entered high school, I was taken to the famous fossil deposit at Newport Beach, a late Pleistocene, and fell in love with it and decided that's what I wanted to do with my life. And so I went to school at first Fullerton Junior College, then Cal State Fullerton, and then I got married and moved up here and got my bachelor's and my master's at San Jose State in geology, and pretty much picked up paleontology on my own.
That's great. And what's unique about the Purisima Formation here at Capitola Beach? And have there been some fossil finds over the years that have surprised you?
So the Purisima here is young enough that it's something where the preservation is usually pretty good. There's also over a mile of section here in northern Monterey Bay of the Purisima, ranging from about 6 million years to 2.5 million years. And it's just chock full of millions and millions of fossils, both invertebrates and vertebrates, and even microfossils.
How have your collaborations with other scientists helped to inform our understanding of the local geology and paleontology?
So, I guess at the level of the USGS, everybody has a specialty, whether it's correlating ash, if it's sedimentology, if it's age dating with forams or with macrofossils or with magnetic reversals. And we applied almost all those to the section here, northern Monterey Bay, to figure out what was going on, what environments it represented, what age it was, and what fossils were contained in it.
Right. Well, we understand from your work that the Purisima Formation crops out at other locations in northern and central California. So how does the Capitola Beach section compare with the Moss Beach section?
So the section here in northern Monterey Bay is much more complete. It's about a mile in thickness, and it covers probably 10, 12 miles of coastline. While up at Moss Beach, the section is much reduced, and it's cut by a fault. So there's two different parts of the Purisima exposed there. There's a deep water part, which with very few fossils, and a very shallow water part in the intertidal zone that's been deformed into a syncline, and then one end is deformed even lower, so it's called a plunging syncline. And there's intertidal mollusks in there.
Right. And what does that section in particular at Moss Beach help us understand about the local plate tectonic characteristics?
Plate tectonics, not really much of anything, but it helps figure out the dating of faults. It figures out the environments that existed in the Neogene. You're able to correlate across plate boundaries. The Purisima in the Bay Area is cut into like 5 different sections that don't easily correlate with one another. And the work here with the fossils, working at the biostratigraphy, has allowed us to correlate all these various fault blocks with a high degree of accuracy.
Chuck, tell us what we're looking at here in the shell bed.
So, yes, these are shell accumulations over time where you have animals die and the valves separate. These are mostly clams. Valves separate, and then they're washed into concentrations by currents or wave action underneath the water. And they accumulate in large shell beds that are just a joy to look through and discover new things.
So could this be an ancient storm deposit or a high energy event that carried these clams?
Yes, it could be. You'd have to look more in cross section. And we're looking at the top of it here, and it's been polished, so you're looking through partial shells. But yeah, it could be just natural, a shell accumulation like an offshore bar, or it could be a storm deposit. Just looking at the top of it like this, you can't tell.
Can't really tell. And when you see these boulders on the beach and ones that do have these distinctive, shell bed characteristics, do you know where they come from in the section?
Personally, I don't.
Okay.
Wayne does, because he's looked at this section more.
So,
much more than I have.
Okay. And that's where the collaboration with
Exactly.
other scientists and paleontologists is so important. And then in other boulders we see here, so this one, I noticed that the color of the sediment sometimes changes. There'll be darker gray layers or lighter gray. And, is that important to know what kind of...
Not necessarily. A lot of that will have to do with after the rock's been, or the sediments have been deposited, what happens afterwards, diagenesis.
Right.
If they're cemented, like this is a very hard rock because calcium is leached out of the shells and has solidified the rock as a cement. And you got where you have just a few shells in other surrounding boulders, you don't get that effect.